Hello, and welcome to another edition at Aging Well, where we have a cooking demonstration. Today, I have the day off, and Laura Jean has the day off from cooking, and so does Steve Westerman. Today, we're very happy to have a very good friend of mine named George Mangalo, and today we're going to work on a project. Well, George is going to work on a project. Breastfeed's been his family for many, many years, and it's called making your own yogurt. So without further ado, George, please come on in and you can start your presentation.
Oh, thank you, Steve. So making your own yogurt, most people probably have thought, well, how do you make yogurt? I mean, yogurt is something you buy in the store and it comes in a little package, usually with some fruit on the bottom. And why make my own? Well, one of the reasons why I want to have you make your own is that the yogurt that you find in the store tends to have a lot of sugars, and it tends to have a lot of other ingredients in it, where if you make it from home, you know exactly what you have in your yogurt. Now, it's a very simple recipe. I just remember as a child growing up, going to my grandparents' house and seeing the yogurt sitting on the stove, and it was sitting on the stove to keep it nice and warm as we created it. So there's only 3 ingredients that you'll really need, or 3 things that you'll need in order to make yogurt. So you're going to need some whole milk. Now, you can use non-fat or low-fat milk, but it's just not going to come out as thick and creamy as you would like. You would also need a starter. So a starter would be a plain yogurt starter. I like to use the Fage, and I like to use the one that has 5%, because that's a full-fat yogurt. If I use a full-fat yogurt, again, I'm going to come out with a much thicker and heavier yogurt. I also need a saucepan. I'm going to also need a blanket to wrap it in. So once I've created the yogurt, I need to wrap it and keep it warm for about 8 hours. So any blanket will do. You also will need a thermometer. The thermometer is going to help you to measure the temperature of the yogurt. So let's get started. So the first thing you need is, let's open up our gallon of milk and add it to our saucepan. Now, what I'm going to do with the yogurt, with the milk right now, is I'm going to place it on the stove in order to heat it up. What I'm trying to do is bring it to just under a boil. So water tends to boil at 200 degrees. So what I'm going to do is try to bring it to around 190, 195. Okay, so I'm going to place it on the stove and let it get to somewhere around 190 to 195. I don't want to reach 200 because then it will start to boil. Once it starts to boil, it rises. If it rises too much, it's going to go all over the stove. If it goes all over the stove, it just makes nothing but a mess for ourselves. So we'll leave that on there for a few minutes. Now, with the magic of TV, we already have some that have started to cool. So once I've brought it to a boil, I now want to bring it down to a temperature of around 120 to 130.
So George, I know you talk about temperatures and things like that. How do you do the temperature on that?
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my trusty thermometer, and what I'm looking for is a temperature of between 120 and 130. That's usually the ideal temperature. So right now I'm running somewhere around 135. Okay. Now, I'm going to start to prep my yogurt. Now, like I said, I've purchased the Fage. So I've removed the top. They always have this little piece of plastic along the top. So you want to make sure you remove that because you don't want to add that to your yogurt. Now, I'm going to take my trusty spatula, add my yogurt starter to a nice bowl. You can use all of it, you can use part of it, just as long as you have enough for about maybe a half a cup. This one's about a half a cup, so if you were to use a larger one, just again, about a half a cup is all that's needed. Now, I'm now going to add the milk to the yogurt. So I'm only going to add about maybe a couple of ladles. just enough so that when I mix the yogurt or mix the milk, it's going to incorporate with the yogurt. So now taking my trusty mixer, I'm going to mix the yogurt with the milk, and then I'm going to add it now to the larger. Because all I'm trying to do is just incorporate it in so that the starter, which has all the cultures, the natural cultures of the yogurt, is now going to be infused into the milk so that we in turn can create yogurt throughout the entire batch. So I'm just going to whisk it around for a short while. Now, can you use a hand whisker? Of course. And I tend to use a hand whisker. Now, once I have mixed all of my ingredients, it's now a matter of just placing it inside of jars. Now, this is the Barilla sauce jar, Classico sauce jar, just whatever jars I might have available. To make it a lot nicer and neater, I'm going to use a funnel so that I don't waste anything and it doesn't end up all over my countertop. So I'm going to now just ladle it in until I fill up all three, at least three, for a half a gallon, maybe 3.5. So I do have 4 jars here, 3 of the larger ones, 1 smaller one. So I'm just going to keep ladling it in. Until we have almost a full one. One of the things that you do want to make sure that when you are using the jars, that the jars that you use have a wide enough mouth. So you don't want to use something that has a very small mouth because it's going to be very hard for you to get back into. Now, I'm going to tighten this, and this is where my blanket comes into play. So now I'm going to roll out my blanket, make sure that it's even so I can place these in here. And I'm going to place each one of these inside of my blanket. So now we'll add the next one. Okay, so now that we have added all of our the milk to all of our jars, now we're going to wrap it in the blanket. The reason why we wrap it in the blanket is that it needs to now stay warm, and it needs to stay to a temperature of somewhere between 120 and 130 for about 8 hours. So I'm going to wrap it and I'm going to put it in a nice warm area. When I said to you that I remember a time when I was going to my grandparents' house and I would see the jars of yogurt sitting on the stove, if you remember those 3-family homes that you'd have in Providence where the gas stoves always had the pilot light going, so it was a nice warm spot. You want to keep this in a nice warm spot. You want to keep it away from maybe an open breeze or an open window, but you'd want to keep it in a spot that's going to at least keep it a little warm without any breezes. Now, I'm going to check on the other one that we had started. So I noticed that it's frothing at the top. As it starts to froth at the top, we know that it's getting towards the temperature that we need, which is going to be somewhere around 190 to 195. So I'm going to place my trusty thermometer in the milk and see where it gets to. And it's going pretty rapidly right up there. And I don't want it to come to a boil, because if it gets to the boil, I don't want it to go all over the stove.
Then I'll have to clean it, right, George?
And then we'll have to clean it, and that's the part I hate. So at this point, we've reached that temperature, so I'm going to shut off the heat, and I'm going to let it cool down until I get to a temperature of around 130. Now, once we've created the yogurt, the one thing you're going to notice about the yogurt that you make at home is that it's going to be a little more tart than what you'd be used to at the store. You can add a little bit of sugar in the cooking process as you're making it. It's going to really come down to your personal taste. If you also want it a little thicker, you can add a little bit of cornstarch to it. That's another way to thicken up the yogurt. But I'll show you another way that I've learned to thicken up my yogurt to make it more like that thick Greek yogurt that you find at home, or at the store, that you can make at home. So now here's a jar of yogurt that I made just the other day. So it is now, after I've let it get to 8 hours with the blanket, I'm now going to put it into the refrigerator. Once I put it into the refrigerator, just let it cool down, and it's yours to eat. And it will last, as long as it's not open, it'll last quite a long time. Now, okay, so now you can see that the yogurt has formed and has come quite thick. There's a little bit of whey that's on the top. That we can remove by letting it soak overnight. So what you can do is to create tzatziki. If you've ever heard of tzatziki, it's that Greek yogurt that they add some cucumbers to, and they add some salt, some pepper, a little bit of lemon juice. That's how they make tzatziki. So now we can take this and pour it into a colander. The colander I have lined with a nice towel, and I put a pan underneath it. So as this drains, what it's going to do is allow it to all the way to go to the bottom, and I can throw that away. I don't need that water, I just need the yogurt that's going to form at the end. So now what I like to do is I tend to like to use a slotted spoon. And the reason why I use a slotted spoon is I just want to get in there and loosen this up before I add it to my my colander. So I'm going to mix up my yogurt. And now I can take that and I can add it to and I'm gonna leave just a little bit in there for myself for later, for another recipe. And we're going to let this just drain, and I'm gonna take it, place it in the refrigerator and let it drain overnight. So right now, it will begin to slowly start to drip out, and all of the water will be released from the yogurt to create a very thick yogurt. Now last night, I made some of the tzatziki, or I made some of that thick Greek yogurt. And you'll notice that it's very, very thick. So it's almost like a cream cheese. This is great on a bagel in the morning rather than using cream cheese. You know that it's got a lot less fat to it and a lot better, a lot more probiotics for us. Now, once we have let this drain overnight, we're going to come up with this consistency. So there's a couple of things you can do with this recipe. So we can do a few things. One, you can make a parfait, or another is to make a tzatziki. Now the tzatziki is very simple to make. We're gonna take a cucumber. I like to use the English cucumbers. And the reason why I like to use these is because they have very few seeds in them. So if it has few seeds, it's gonna make it a lot easier for me to cut up and to shred. So I'll cut off a piece of this. I don't need very much because I have a very small amount here. I'm going to remove the plastic off of this. And now I'll begin to shred it using my shredder. So I've gotten some great cucumber shreds. Now I'm going to take a towel. I'm going to place my cucumber shreds in that towel. My goal is I want to squeeze out as much liquid as possible. I don't want the liquid to go into my yogurt because all I'm going to end up with is a very runny yogurt, which I just spent all night draining. So now I'm going to squeeze out any of the liquid. Until I get a nice dry consistency. And now I'm going to add that to my yogurt. So I take that, let's grab this, add it to my yogurt. Now, I'm also going to add a few spices to this. So one is I want to add a little bit of lemon zest in order to add that nice flavor of lemon. Lemon and cucumbers along with yogurt is a great combination. Okay, now that I've added some lemon zest, I want to add just a little bit of lemon. So I don't have a very big amount here, so I'm only going to squeeze a little bit of lemon If I had a much larger, of course, I'd add a little more. So just want to add some lemon juice to this, just to add that nice brightness to the tzatziki. Now I'm also going to season it with a little bit of salt and pepper. And now I can mix it. And end up with a nice tzatziki. Now, what can I use this with? Well, I can use it with lamb. I can use it with beef. You can mix it with your hamburger. You can use it as a spread. It's wonderful also as a dip. Another thing you can also use just the plain yogurt for once you drained it is take it. I personally love chips and dip. Onion dip is one of my favorite things. If I get a packet of onion mix it in with the yogurt. Again, it's going to be healthier for you and it's going to be fresher. It's something that you made yourself and it'll be a wonderful dish. Now, another thing is that most people tend to like their yogurt with fruit. So you can actually create your own little parfaits. So you can take like little jars, take some nice preserves. So now you can take any preserve that you'd like. I personally have some cherry preserves that I made, but you can use strawberry. I would use a preserve over a jelly, partly because preserves had chunks of fruit in it. If it has chunks of fruit, you're gonna have something that adds a little texture to your yogurt as you're eating it. Now, you can add this to our jelly jar, right there at the bottom. And then now we can add our yogurt to the top. And create a nice yogurt parfait.
Now, George, could you put like granola in there too? And it could be like a morning breakfast?
It's wonderful with granola because you can have that nice texture that you're going to get with granola. So once you fill this up, now you can close your top and have a nice parfait for later in the day, or for the kids to take to school. You can put it in a plastic container. It's another thing you can do for the kids to take to school. Perfect. And as you mix this all up, you're going to get the nice flavors all throughout your entire yogurt. So what else can you do with this? With yogurt, you can pretty much mix it with almost anything. Adding fruits, adding vegetables. One thing that we grew up with as a family was in the summer, we could make a yogurt soup. So we would take the yogurt, we'd add water to it, so we thinned it out. We could either drink it as a drink, or you could turn around and add chunks of cucumber to it and make it like a yogurt soup. So those are just some of the options. You've got a wonderful tzatziki that you can add to meats. You can use as a dip for vegetables, or you can do some parfaits. You can add water to it, make a nice drink, or you can turn around and add some chunks of cucumber and make a nice, refreshing yogurt soup for the summer.
Now, George, don't you use yogurt as a marinade?
You can also use it as a marinade. I've used it for chicken. It's a great marinade for chicken. Take it, add it to, take a Ziploc bag, put your chicken in it, add your salt, pepper, whatever, and then turn around and add your yogurt. See, the yogurt has acids in it. So because it has the acids in it, it's gonna help to break down the meat and break down the muscle, which is gonna make it much more tender. It'll also seal in all of the juices. So when you place that chicken breast or the chicken on the grill, you're gonna get that flavor that's sealed into the chicken.
Well, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed the demonstration today. George, thanks so much for coming up here and taking time out of your day
Thank you.
to start this. And I hope the folks will try this at home and let us know how it works out. Laura Jean's going to jump in with us, and we're going to
Try
dig
it.
in.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, you go in for that one. I'm going to mix this together.
Should I just dip?
Absolutely.
I won't double dip.
No, we won't double dip. No.
Really good. Oh my god. I like the tartness.
Mm-hmm.
It does almost like a cream cheese consistency.
Yep. Which would make
So
it
good.
great for things like a bagel.
I would spread that on toast.
Because you could turn around and chop up scallions, mix it in, and now you've got like a scallion spread
Very smooth.
for your bagel. I could also chop up lox.
Mm-hmm.
Put some lox in it with some scallions. Would be amazing.
Excellent.
That'd be great for a dip. It really would. Okay, I've mixed this up. I would put granola in it, but we didn't have any granola. But I'm gonna take a taste. Oh, cherry! It's very good.
Was it cherry?
Yeah, it's cherry.
I love these. Sometimes they have them at Whole Foods, but they're very expensive. So this is a much cheaper way to make these.
Yes.
Mmm. Really good.
Very
you can
good.
tell it's fresh. It tastes different.
Any questions? Feel free to give us a call at 401-766-3734. Be happy to answer your questions or your comments. And until next time, we thank you very much.